was born when she kissed me. I died when she left me.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. I ain't so tough.
Remember those classic movies? The ones that made you fall in love with film without even realizing it? These iconic stories shaped your weekends, your childhood, your idea of what movies could be. But what if the ones that mattered most are still waiting to be discovered? You have never seen anything like Sherlock Jr., even if you think you have. Buster Keaton does not just star in this silent film, he defies the rules of reality in it. A movie about a projectionist who steps into the screen, it is filled with illusions that still feel impossible today. The edits are seamless, the stunts are terrifying. And the story? It is light, sweet, and strangely romantic. In 1924, no one had ever seen a chase scene leap through space and logic like this. Keaton turns editing into magic, and magic into comedy. It is not just clever, it is fearless. Watching this now, you start to see where so many modern filmmakers got their ideas. Every frame is a blueprint. Every joke is timed to perfection. But more than that, it is full of heart. Keaton's little guy never gets bitter. He gets up, dusts off, and tries again, no matter how many times the world pulls the rug out from under him. 100 years later, it still feels fresh, still feels alive. And maybe the best part is realizing how little you need to make a great movie. Just courage, craft, and one very quiet genius. There is a reason It Happened One Night changed everything. A runaway heiress, a broke reporter, a broken-down bus, and the most famous hitchhiking scene in movie history. Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert do not just have chemistry, they practically burn a hole through the screen. This 1934 romantic comedy set the blueprint. Opposites, road trips, tension, and banter so sharp it could cut glass. You can trace nearly every rom-com you love back to this one. Even if you have never seen it, you have felt its influence. The Oscar sweep, picture, director, actor, actress, and screenplay was not a fluke. It was recognition of something that felt new, real, modern. These two people do not fall in love because the script tells them to. They fight it, they resist it, and somehow, that just makes it more satisfying when it happens. It is a film about travel, freedom, and finding someone who sees through your act. And when it ends, you feel lighter. Like love could actually be funny, or messy, or something you stumble into on the side of a dusty road, which, honestly, is a pretty good place to start. If Frankenstein was about science gone too far, Bride of Frankenstein is about what happens after. The monster wants love, the doctor wants peace, and the world, as always, just wants control. This 1935 sequel should not work as well as it does, but it is better, smarter, stranger, more emotional. James Whale, the openly closeted director, infuses it with longing and loneliness that still resonate. The monster is not the villain, he is the heartbreak. And the bride? She barely has to speak to become unforgettable. The tone swerves from camp to tragedy without missing a beat. Gothic sets tower like cathedrals. Screams echo like prayers. And underneath it all is a question we still ask. What makes a monster? This is not a story about horror. It is a story about rejection, about creating something in your own image and being terrified of what you see. The bride hisses, the monster weeps, and we, the audience, are left wondering who deserves sympathy. If Frankenstein built the house of modern horror, Bride gave it soul. And watching it now, it still cuts deep. There are movies that try to be epic, and then there is Gone with the Wind. 4 hours, thousands of extras. A love story set on fire by war, pride, and everything in between. Scarlett O'Hara is not your typical heroine. She is vain, selfish, relentless, and somehow we still root for her. Vivien Leigh gives a performance that practically swallows the screen. This is not a film you watch casually. It demands your full attention, and maybe a little forgiveness. Because yes, the film is complicated. Its depictions of race, slavery, and the Civil War are troubling, romanticized, and often offensive. But that does not erase its place in history. It complicates it. Gone with the Wind is a monument, not to nostalgia, but to spectacle, to the power of cinema when it is allowed to go all in. The burning of Atlanta, the sweeping score, the final line, frankly, my dear, all of it carved into film lore. You do not have to love this movie, but if you care about film, you have to confront it. And maybe that is the most epic thing about it. The Maltese Falcon does not care if you are confused. That is the point. The shadows, the lies, the overlapping double crosses, it is all smoke. What matters is the vibe, the rhythm, the way Humphrey Bogart walks into a room like he owns the air. As Sam Spade, he defines the film noir detective, wry, dangerous, impossible to trust. The plot twists itself in knots, but the mood is always clear. No one gets out clean. Everyone wants something. And in the middle of it all is that bird, the Maltese Falcon, worth millions, worth killing for, or maybe worthless. It does not matter. It is the chase that counts. This is a world where cynicism is currency and trust is a liability. Mary Astor's femme fatale is just soft enough to be dangerous. Peter Lorre slinks in with menace and charm, and John Huston, in his directorial debut, somehow makes it all feel effortless. This is the blueprint for noir. Snappy dialogue, low angles, moral fog, and by the time it ends, you are not sure what the Falcon was worth, but you know exactly what this movie is. Filmed in secret during the Nazi occupation of France, Children of Paradise is more than a movie. It is defiance-made art. It is grand, operatic, alive with love, performance, and impossible choices. Set in the 1830s Paris, it follows a courtesan named Garance and the four very different men who fall for her. An actor, a thief, a poet, a nobleman, and across years and stages their lives intertwine like fate itself. It is not a triangle. It is a maze. One where longing lingers in every look. What makes this film timeless is how it treats love as both gift and curse. Each man sees something different in Garance, an ideal, a salvation, a possession, a muse. But she belongs to no one. Her silence says more than most characters do with pages of dialogue. Love here is dramatic, yes, but also deeply private. And the film refuses to make it simple. The performances are towering, the costumes lush, the camera always moving, searching, like it cannot bear to miss a moment. There is beauty in every frame, and sorrow too. Because in the end, Children of Paradise is not just about love. It is about the lives we perform for others, and the parts of ourselves we hide. And when the final crowd rushes past Garance, leaving her behind in the snow, you realize some goodbyes are too quiet to hear. The Red Shoes is not just about ballet. It is ballet, alive, obsessive, and impossible to look away from. Moira Shearer plays Victoria Page, a young dancer caught between her love of art and her love of a man. And in that tug of war, she is torn to pieces. Director Duo Powell and Pressburger use color like emotion, turning Technicolor into full-blown fever dream. There is a 17-minute ballet sequence that breaks the rules of space, logic, even time, and it is breathtaking. The story is simple, but the feeling is not. It is about ambition, sacrifice, the cost of brilliance. Every costume bleeds meaning. Every movement has weight. You are not watching dancers. You are watching souls unravel. The dance does not tell the story. The dance is the story. And when the music ends, the silence hits like a fall. Anton Walbrook's ballet impresario is magnetic and cold, like art personified. And as the film spirals toward its tragic end, you start to understand perfection has a price. There are no villains here, just choices and consequences. The Red Shoes is not easy. It asks hard questions about who we are when we give ourselves to something fully. But it also shows what cinema can do when it dances with no limits. And that, maybe, is its greatest step. You wait almost halfway through the third man before he shows up, and then suddenly, there he is. Orson Welles in the shadows, smiling like the devil in a bow tie. It is one of the most famous entrances in film. But before that, it is Joseph Cotten as Holly Martins, wandering post-war Vienna, looking for answers about a friend who might not be dead after all. The streets are wet. The faces are tight. The zither music follows like a taunt. Every corner hides a lie. Every smile is too wide. The city itself feels like a character, damaged, stylish, indifferent. The war is over, but the ruins are fresh. Everyone is pretending to rebuild, but trust is gone. Justice is a matter of timing, and friendship is just another angle. This is noir without guns, just paranoia and charm. Wells plays Harry Lime like a ghost who enjoys being dead. And when the film ends with one of the coldest goodbyes in cinema, you are left haunted, not by the crime, but by the ease of betrayal. The third man does not shout. It whispers, and in that whisper is a warning. Some things you cannot unsee. Fasten your seatbelts. It is going to be a bumpy night. Bette Davis throws that line like a dagger in All About Eve, and it lands like prophecy. This is a movie about the theater, about ambition, about aging in an industry that feeds on youth. Davis plays Margot Channing, a star losing her spotlight. Anne Baxter plays Eve, the fan-turned rival who slowly takes it. The tension is not in what happens, it is in what might. Every line is a warning. This is not a catfight. It is psychological warfare in high heels. George Sanders purrs through the script with dry venom. The backstage world feels more dangerous than any battlefield. There is no safe character here, only survivors. Everyone is performing, even off stage. Kindness is a mask, and compliments are weapons. It is not just about getting older, it is about being replaced. And every smile hides a blade. And yet, there is real heartbreak here. Margot is not just losing fame, she is losing time. And Eve, for all her ambition, seems doomed to become the thing she replaces. All About Eve is not just a drama. It is a mirror held up to every performance, on stage or off. And when the mirror turns back to you, the reflection is not always kind. Singin' in the Rain never sounded so good, or looked so joyful, or felt so real. Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, and Debbie Reynolds do not just perform, they float. Singin' in the Rain is Hollywood making fun of itself and doing it with such heart that you can only smile. It is the story of silent film stars scrambling to adapt to sound. But it is also about friendship, reinvention, belting out your best in a thunderstorm. The Make 'em Laugh number is pure chaos, and Good Morning is pure comfort. But it is the title number that soars. There is rain, yes, but the real downpour is joy. The joy of movement, the joy of survival, the joy of finding your voice in the middle of noise. And it reminds you that the best kind of laughter often follows the worst kind of weather. When Kelly dances through the rain, it is not just about love, it is about hope, about finding joy in the middle of mess. This is not just a musical, it is the musical. The one that makes you believe happiness is something you can choreograph, and that sometimes singing in the rain is the only thing that makes sense. High Noon is not about gunfights, it is about choices. The town is quiet, the clock is ticking, and Marshal Will Kane is all alone. Everyone says they believe in justice, until justice requires action. Gary Cooper moves like a man carrying something heavier than fear. He is not fighting for glory. He is fighting because it is the right thing to do. The tension is not in whether he will win, but in how many people will look away while he tries. This Western does not ride fast. It walks slow, and the dread builds with every step. The real-time pacing makes every minute feel earned. Grace Kelly, normally soft-spoken, shows steel beneath the surface. The train is coming. The enemy is coming. And everyone Kane trusted? Nowhere to be found. The townspeople give excuses wrapped in cowardice. They tell themselves it is not their fight. They look out windows but close their doors. Each silent refusal hits harder than a bullet. and Cain keeps walking even as the town fades behind him. High Noon is a morality tale dressed in dust and spurs, and its message, about doing what is right even when it costs you everything, hits harder with age, especially when the silence of others feels louder than any gunshot. 7. Samurai is long. It is black and white. It is in Japanese, and it is perfect. Akira Kurosawa's 1954 epic is the backbone of every team-up movie you have ever loved. A village under threat, a desperate plan, and 7 warriors with nothing in common except a shared sense of honor. The pacing is slow, the payoff enormous. This is storytelling as architecture. Every beam matters. You meet these samurai one by one. You watch them earn trust. You see them fail. You see them sacrifice. Toshiro Mifune steals the screen with wild energy. Takashi Shimura grounds it with quiet resolve. And the final battle, mud, rain, death, is not triumphant. It is tragic, because this is not about winning. It is about what is worth fighting for. Each samurai brings something different: wisdom, pride, recklessness, pain. Their bond is not built with speeches, but with shared risk. Even the villagers grow, learning that fear does not protect them. Courage does. The victory costs them more than they expected. And by the end, you are not sure who really won. Kurosawa's influence is everywhere, from the Magnificent Seven to Star Wars to the Avengers. But no remake captures the soul of the original, the nobility, the pain, the power of strangers coming together when no one else will. Watch it, and you will never see teamwork the same way again. The Night of the Hunter is like a dream someone whispered to you at midnight, beautiful, strange, and full of danger. Robert Mitchum plays the preacher with love and hate tattooed on his knuckles, but nothing about him is holy. He sings, he smiles, and then he hunts. 2 children are running, he is always behind them. The visuals are like storybook nightmares, every shadow shaped with meaning, light slants like judgment. Director Charles Laughton never made another film, but he did not need to. He said it all here. Part thriller, part fable. The Night of the Hunter bends the rules of realism without ever losing its grip. The river scenes feel like time has stopped. The children's fear is so real, you want to hide with them. And then there is that house, that hymn, that long night. Mitchum is unforgettable. His charm is poison. The terror comes not from what he does, but from what he says. Every word is soft, every threat implied, and that makes it worse. Lillian Gish appears like a figure from a fairy tale, but she brings steel with her. The clash between good and evil here feels biblical, because it is. When it came out, critics and audiences did not know what to make of it. But now, it is a classic, a one-of-a-kind blend of Southern Gothic horror and visual poetry. Some movies scare you. This one haunts you. The sweet smell of success smells like cigarette smoke, cheap power, and bad intentions. The words crackle like sparks. The people are poison, and you cannot stop watching. Burt Lancaster plays J.J. Hunsaker, a newspaper columnist who controls lives with a smirk and a pen. Tony Curtis is Sidney Falco, the desperate press agent trying to stay in his orbit. They are both so slick you can almost feel the grease, and so hollow you can hear the echo. The script is razor sharp. The dialogue is cruel, fast, funny, and cold. This is not about redemption. It is about survival and how much of yourself you are willing to sell. The city pulses with danger. The jazz score swings like a threat. And every scene feels like it is teetering on a ledge. Success in this movie is not about talent, it is about leverage. Everyone wants in and no one cares what it costs. The press is not noble. It is a weapon, and Hunsaker wields it like a knife. The scariest part is not what he does. It is how easily he gets away with it. This is not noir with detectives and dames. It is darker than that. It is about power, about how easy it is to lose your soul when all you want is a seat at the table. Watch it, and then ask yourself, what would you trade to be somebody? North by Northwest is Hitchcock at his slickest. Cary Grant runs from a crop duster, climbs Mount Rushmore, and looks impeccable doing it. This is not just a thriller, it is a chase movie with elegance and grin. He is not a spy. He is just a guy in the wrong place with the wrong name. The suspense is fun, not frightening. The danger feels like a game you do not want to end. Hitchcock juggles romance, humor, and action without dropping a beat. Eva Marie Saint is icy and electric. James Mason oozes calm menace. And Bernard Herrmann's score pulses like a heartbeat in a tailored suit. This is not a mystery you solve, it is a ride you take. Fast trains, fancy parties, secret governments. Everything moves with style. Every set piece is a masterclass in tension and timing. You are not just watching, you're grinning. Grant never loses his cool, even when the story does. And somehow, that makes the ride smoother. The film knows it is ridiculous and invites you to enjoy every second of it. North by Northwest proves thrillers do not have to be grim. They can be charming, witty, romantic. And when the final scene comes, it feels like a wink. Because this movie never takes itself too seriously, which is exactly why it is so great. Some like it. Hot starts with a mafia hit and ends with a kiss, and everything in between is chaos. Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis witness a crime and go on the run. Their disguise? Joining an all-female band in drag. Marilyn Monroe is the singer. The train is cramped. The jokes never stop. This is comedy on the edge. Fast, smart, and just a little dangerous. The gender-bending setup is not just funny, it is freeing. The disguises start as a survival tactic but quickly become something more. These characters begin to drop their masks only after putting them on. They see how different the world looks when you change your reflection, and they start to question what they actually want from life, love, and themselves. In pretending to be someone else, they come closer to being real. These men find themselves in situations they cannot control, and somewhere in the mess, they discover who they really are. Billy Wilder directs with a perfect mix of farce and feeling. Lemmon is manic and lovable. Curtis is suave and scheming. And Monroe glows with vulnerability. The final line, "Nobody's perfect," is cinema history. But it only works because everything before it hits just right. This is not just one of the best comedies ever made. It is a celebration of identity, survival, and falling in love when everything is upside down. Breathless does not care about the rules, and that is exactly the point. Jean-Luc Godard's 1960 debut crashes through film tradition like a car chase without brakes. Jump cuts, street noise, characters talking directly to the camera. It is cool, careless, and completely revolutionary. A film about doing whatever you want and pretending not to care. Michelle, the French thief, is all sunglasses and swagger. Patricia, his American girlfriend, is all question marks. Their relationship is doomed before it starts, and that is why it feels real. This movie did not just ignore the rulebook, it ripped it up and lit it on fire. Everything from the editing to the acting feels spontaneous, almost like it is happening for the first time. The coolness is not polished. It is improvised, uncertain, alive. Godard was not trying to impress anyone. He was trying to shake you awake. And if you let it, this film does exactly that. Godard shot it fast, on location, without permission. It looks like life, but it feels like a dream. This is the French New Wave in full swing, romantic, raw, and endlessly watchable. If it seems like nothing much is happening, look closer. Everything is happening. The style, the attitude, the way people speak, it is all deliberate. Breathless changed cinema. You might not love it, but you will not forget it. And for some films, that is the whole point. Lawrence of Arabia is not a film. It is a horizon. It stretches wide and deep. It moves slowly, but with purpose. Peter O'Toole plays T.E. Lawrence with eerie confidence and blue eyes that could blind. He is a British soldier who goes native in the desert during World War I, but that barely scratches the surface. The real story is about identity, what you become when you no longer belong anywhere. David Lean fills every frame with beauty. Sand dunes become sculpture, fire becomes language. The score swells like something ancient. Lawrence is not a hero or a villain, He is a man unraveling. The more he is praised, the more he drifts from who he used to be. His transformation is majestic and terrifying all at once. The desert is not just a setting, it becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, Lawrence sees something vast and unknowable. This is a movie about war, but also about obsession, about charisma, about what happens when the world calls you a hero and you start believing it. The politics are complicated, the character even more so. But the experience? Breathtaking. You do not watch Lawrence of Arabia, you disappear into it, and when you come back, the world feels just a little smaller. The Graduate starts with a blank stare and ends with a question mark. Benjamin Braddock does not know what to do with his life, so he drifts into an affair with an older woman, into love with her daughter, into a mess that feels strangely familiar. The soundtrack is Simon and Garfunkel. The mood is disillusionment. The vibe is pure 1960s. Dustin Hoffman plays awkward like a weapon. Anne Bancroft is seductive, bitter, brilliant. And the ending? Rushed, romantic, then suddenly uncertain, stuck in people's heads for decades. This is not a rebellion. It is confusion with a college degree. Benjamin is not sure what he is running from or running toward. But something about that makes him feel more real than any movie hero before him. It is not about making sense. It is about feeling something, anything. This is not just a coming-of-age movie. It is a snapshot of a generation that stopped trusting what it was told. The suburbs, the career path, the picture-perfect future, it all cracks under the weight of confusion. The Graduate is funny, sad, sharp, lost. And that makes it honest. Maybe more than any other film of its time. Rosemary's Baby does not scream, it whispers. At first, everything seems fine. A new apartment, a charming husband, some strange but friendly neighbors. But something is off. The dreams, the smells, the way no one listens. This is horror built on gaslighting, on watching someone's reality slowly crumble. Mia Farrow's performance is all fragility and fear. She loses weight, loses sleep, loses control, and we are trapped with her, one slow step at a time. The scariest thing is not the devil. It is how easy it is to be silenced. Her instincts are ignored, her body is not her own, and everyone around her smiles through the horror like it is polite conversation. Evil does not need to sneak in, it gets invited, and that makes it harder to fight. Roman Polanski directs with icy precision. Nothing wasted, nothing random. The terror creeps in like fog. By the time you understand what is happening, it is too late. Rosemary's Baby is not about demons. It is about betrayal, about trust turned against you, about being alone in a room full of smiling faces. And when she rocks that cradle in the final scene, you realize the scariest thing is not what they did. It is what she is willing to accept. The Last Picture Show is not sentimental, but it will break your heart anyway. Shot in stark black and white, this 1971 film looks back on a small Texas town with no illusions. There is no grandeur, no cowboy myths, just empty streets, a broken movie house, and kids trying to figure out what comes after nothing. Jeff Bridges is the dreamer. Timothy Bottoms is the one left behind. Sybil Shepherd is luminous and cruel and lost. Everything feels lived in. Every silence stretches just a little too long. Director Peter Bogdanovich does not try to dress anything up. The beauty is in the emptiness. The town is dying. The relationships are fraying. And the adults, Ellen Burstyn, Cloris Leachman, Ben Johnson, are just as lost as the teenagers, maybe more so. There is sex, but it is clumsy. There is love, but it is fleeting. And through it all, the sense that this place is drying up, fading into memory even as it's happening. When the movie ends, the title suddenly makes sense. Because what do you do after the Last Picture Show closes? What happens when the lights go out and there is no next act? The Last Picture Show does not answer. It just watches. And sometimes that is more honest than hope. Cabaret is glitter in the dark. It is all feathers, smiles, and high kicks until it isn't. Berlin is roaring. The Kit Kat Club is alive. And Liza Minnelli's Sally Bowles is a star you cannot take your eyes off of. But just behind her spotlight, something awful is waking up. This is not just a musical, it is a reckoning. The songs are dazzling. The choreography snaps, but the tension crawls beneath every number. Bob Fosse directs with a magician's flair and a cynic's eye. The camera dances when it can and freezes when it needs to. Joel Grey's MC grins with menace, always watching. The love stories twist, the air tightens, and the Nazis rise in the background, slowly, then suddenly. When Tomorrow Belongs to Me hits, it chills the blood, because you realize how easily beauty turns into denial, and how denial turns into disaster. Sally sings because it hurts not to. The world falls apart anyway. Cabaret is not just about politics, it is about the cost of looking away, of pretending the world will keep spinning while you sip champagne. It won 8 Oscars. It deserved more. Because when the music fades, what lingers is the silence. And the question, what would you have done while the band played on? The Exorcist does not rely on jump scares. It wraps itself around your spine. A girl levitates, a priest breaks, a mother watches helplessly. But the real terror is what you cannot see, the crisis of faith, the erosion of certainty, the idea that evil exists, not just in the shadows, but inside someone you love. Linda Blair's Reagan is horrifying, but also heartbreaking. She is the victim, the battleground, the scream. William Friedkin's direction is relentless. The camera holds, the cold breath fogs, the room gets darker, and you can feel the dread in your chest like a second heartbeat. This is not just horror, it is spiritual confrontation. The Catholicism is not window dressing, it is the spine of the film. The priests do not stride in with confidence, they stumble in with doubt, and that makes the fight feel real. Max von Sydow's weary resolve, Jason Miller's torment, Ellen Burstyn's desperation. Every performance carries weight. You are not watching a movie. You are being tested by it. What do you believe in when science fails? What do you do when prayers seem useless? The Exorcist asks these questions through pea soup and spinning heads, but the effect is deeper than shock. It unsettles your soul. Because when the devil speaks, the scariest thing is that he knows your name. The conversation begins with noise, background chatter, microphones pointed at strangers in a crowd. Harry Call, played by Gene Hackman, is listening, but not connecting. He is the best at what he does, surveillance. But he is also the most alone. He hides behind equipment, behind walls, behind rules he pretends to follow. This is not an action movie. It is a spiral, a man cracking open under the weight of information he cannot forget. Francis Ford Coppola directed this between The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and it might be his quietest, most personal masterpiece. The story unfolds slowly. Harry records a conversation. Something sounds off, and the deeper he digs, the more unstable he becomes. The paranoia builds. The camera keeps its distance. The city feels like a trap. There is no villain in sight, just echoes. The final scene, where Harry tears apart his apartment searching for a bug, is one of the loneliest moments in film. The conversation is about surveillance, yes, but it is also about guilt, isolation, control. It is a film for anyone who has ever replayed a moment over and over, wondering what they missed, or what they should have stopped. In a world full of noise, sometimes silence is the loudest thing you hear. Taxi Driver is not about the violence, it is about the rot underneath it. Travis Bickle drives through New York like he is the last man alive. He sees the filth, the corruption, the emptiness, and he wants to burn it all down. But first, he wants to matter. Robert De Niro disappears into Travis. Every glance, every twitch, every slow blink feels dangerous. Martin Scorsese shoots the city like a fever dream. Red lights, steam, sweat, and loneliness. The score by Bernard Herrmann is jazzy and hellish at once. Travis writes in a journal that sounds like a cry for help, but nobody's listening. He tries to date. He fails. He buys guns. He trains. He stares at himself in the mirror and asks, "You talking to me?" We all know the line, but in the movie, it is not a punchline. It is a warning. Travis is not the hero. He is the symptom of war, of alienation, of a city that chews people up and spits them out. Jodie Foster plays the child he wants to save. But what he really wants is a reason to act. Taxi Driver ends in blood, but not clarity. And that is the genius of it. Because the scariest thing is not what Travis does. It is how easy it is to understand him. The 20th Century Fox Hour was a short-lived attempt to bridge the golden age of cinema with the golden glow of television. Running from 1955 to 1957, it was an anthology series that adapted well-known films and original stories into hour-long television dramas. It was elegant. It was cinematic. It tried to carry the weight of the studio's name on its back and bring it straight into your living room. Each episode had a familiar polish to it, like watching a condensed movie but with all the grandeur still intact. Famous stories were trimmed down to fit into 60 minutes, and new dramas tried their best to live up to the brand that preceded them. Some succeeded, some did not. But even when it missed with grace. The lighting, the music, the framing, it all felt like a miniature film festival delivered to your living room. You did not watch it to laugh or relax, you watched it to watch. It reminded people that television could be art, not just noise. But every Sunday, viewers knew they were getting something a little more refined, a little more serious. In a world of variety shows and slapstick, the 20th Century Fox Hour felt like a whisper from the movie theater down the street. It was classy without being cold, dramatic without being dull. But the formula proved hard to sustain. The rise of sitcoms, westerns, and science fiction made its slower pacing feel out of step. Eventually, it quietly faded, unable to compete with the flashier new kids on the block. But it left behind a strange elegance, a kind of dignity that other shows rarely aimed for. Super Train was a show that promised the future and delivered a train wreck. Literally. Picture this, a massive nuclear-powered train that had everything from gyms to swimming pools to full-blown nightclubs, speeding across America like a landlocked spaceship. It was NBC's answer to The Love Boat, except instead of a cruise, you were on rails. And instead of smooth sailing, it was a multi-million-dollar gamble that crashed and burned faster than anyone expected. The production budget was astronomical for its time, higher than anything else on television in 1979. They even built a giant set and miniature models for the train itself. But viewers, they just didn't show up. The stories on board were supposed to be romantic and dramatic and weekly anthologies, but the scripts were flat and the characters forgettable. It aired on Sunday nights, and NBC had high hopes that it would become the next big thing. Instead, Super Train became the poster child for overambition. Critics tore it apart, and within a few months, it was gone. Still, for a show that failed so spectacularly, it left behind something rare. Footage that looks like retrofuturism exploded all over your screen. It's wild, lavish sets, bright lights, an entire casino inside a train. You cannot look away. It's hard not to respect just how bold it was, even if it collapsed under its own weight. Super Train was flashy, short-lived, and unforgettable for all the wrong, and maybe just a few right, reasons. Before nostalgia became an aesthetic, Margie brought it to life with pink wallpaper and cloche hats. Set in the roaring 20s but aired in the early 1960s, this sitcom was a charming, retro escape into a world that felt dreamlike, even to its original audience. Margie Clayton was the all-American girl, witty and wide-eyed, caught between homework and heartbreak. She lived in a time of flappers and prohibition, but her struggles felt familiar. Parents who didn't understand, boys who did not listen, friends who came and went. Every episode was like opening an old photo album, sepia-toned, soft around the edges, and a little too perfect to be real. That was the magic. The show was more than just a period piece. It was a bridge between generations. Adults saw their youth in it. Kids saw a version of growing up that felt both exciting and safe. But it did not last. 1 year. That was all Margie got. The network said the ratings were weak, but the truth is, Margie's quiet storytelling could not compete with louder, faster shows. And so it vanished, tucked into the drawer of television history like a love letter no one had the heart to throw away. Today, barely anyone remembers Margie, but if you do, you probably remember how she made you feel, like being young was something you never wanted to let go of. It had the setting, it had the potential, it even made history. The Corner Bar was a sitcom set in a modest New York watering hole, a familiar formula with a twist. It featured one of the first recurring gay characters on American television. Peter Panama, played by Vincent Schiavelli, was quietly groundbreaking. But the show around him never quite matched the boldness of that casting. Week after week, it shuffled between quirky patrons, minor hijinks, and barroom chatter that often felt more like background noise than plot. ABC hoped it would be a hit in the style of Cheers, before Cheers existed. But the writing lacked the snap. The characters blurred together. The bar, instead of feeling lived in, felt like a stage set waiting for the real show to begin. Audiences did not connect, ratings dropped, the cast changed. The show was retooled for a second season with a new owner and different characters, but it still could not find its voice. After 2 brief seasons, it disappeared with little fanfare. And yet, for that one quiet step forward in representation, it remains part of television history. Not for being great, not even for being good, but for daring, however briefly, to show someone different. The Corner Bar might not have lasted, but it cracked the door open. That matters, even if everything else around it faded. You could not watch Perfect Strangers without falling in love with Balki Bartokomous. He came from the fictional island of Mypos, wore vests over sweaters in the middle of summer, and had a heart so big it practically broke through the screen. Then there was Larry Appleton, tightly wound, neurotic, trying way too hard to keep it together in a Chicago apartment that suddenly had to accommodate a wide-eyed cousin who had never used an elevator before. It was a classic odd couple setup, but it had something deeper going on, something that stuck with you even if you forgot all the punchlines. What made Perfect Strangers work was not just the culture clash. Though yes, there were many hilarious misunderstandings involving vacuum cleaners, pig statues, and whatever strange tradition Balki brought with him from Mypos. It was about connection. Balki and Larry were different in every way, but they were family, and they made each other better, even when Larry was losing his mind over a job interview, and Balki just wanted to dance the dance of joy. The show had heart, not the glossy, overproduced kind, but the kind that creeps up on you in a scene where one cousin messes everything up and the other forgives him anyway. It made room for silliness, like Balki trying to understand American slang, and still managed to teach a whole generation what patience, empathy, and kindness looked like between people who had no reason to get along, but did it anyway. Looking back, Perfect Strangers feels like a quiet rebellion against cynicism. It told you that the world might be confusing and complicated, but a little laughter and a lot of compassion could carry you through. It reminded kids who felt like outsiders that being different was not just okay. It was wonderful. It was joyful. It was worth dancing for. You probably forgot how good it felt to watch these two figure things out together. Maybe you did not remember the names. Maybe you forgot the storylines. But if you ever laughed when someone yelled, "Don't be ridiculous," then it is already part of you. And maybe that is what we all need again. Something silly, sincere, and just strange enough to feel like home. The Colgate Comedy Hour was not just another variety show, it was an event. Airing live from 1950 to 1955, it brought the electric chaos of the stage directly into the homes of millions. Hosted by a rotating cast of comedy legends like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, Eddie Cantor, and Abbott and Costello, the show captured a kind of energy that no scripted sitcom ever could. It was unpredictable, unpolished, and wildly entertaining. Every week was a gamble, a new experiment in whether or not the comedians could top their last performance. And more often than not, they did. It was a golden age of television in the raw, where mistakes happened on air and the audience loved it more for that. You felt the tension in every live performance. Anything could go wrong, and sometimes it did. But that chaos made it human, alive, and impossible to turn away from. It was the only place where you could see slapstick, song, and celebrity all within the same breath. And at its best, it felt like the whole country was in on the joke at the same time. The competition with The Ed Sullivan Show was fierce, and at times it looked like Colgate might actually win. But time plays favorites, and while Ed Sullivan became immortal, Colgate Comedy Hour became something else, a memory. It disappeared almost as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving only clips and scattered references behind. Yet for those who watched it, those Sunday nights were unforgettable. You did not just laugh. You roared. You shouted across the room. You felt alive. It was theater, comedy, and chaos wrapped into 1 hour of brilliance. Aliens in the Family was one of those shows that made you do a double take. Part puppet show, part live-action sitcom, it was a science fiction oddity that aired on ABC in 1996. It followed a blended family, half human, half alien, trying to live together under one roof. Think The Brady Bunch meets The Muppets, with a dash of outer space weirdness. It was colorful, chaotic, and completely offbeat, and audiences had no idea what to do with it. Children were confused, parents were indifferent, critics were baffled. The puppet characters, created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, were impressive, but the tone of the show constantly bounced between wacky and heartfelt, never quite landing on either. One moment, you had alien dad jokes and slapstick burps, and the next, you had tearful lessons about acceptance and identity. It didn't just blur tones, it erased the lines completely. In doing so, it gave some kids their first glimpse of what it meant to feel different and still be loved. The jokes often missed. The emotional moments felt too strange to sink in. But under all the eccentricity was something unique, an attempt to talk about blended families, about difference and acceptance, through the lens of weird intergalactic humor. It was bold. Too bold, maybe. Only a handful of episodes aired before it was quietly pulled from the schedule. It has since become a punchline in weird TV retrospectives. But there is a generation of viewers who caught those few episodes wide-eyed, wondering if they had imagined the whole thing. For them, it was not just bizarre, it was oddly touching. The show tried to say something about what makes a family, and how love looks different across space and species. This show was weird. Beautifully, unapologetically weird. The Adventures of Pete and Pete followed two red-headed brothers, both named Pete, through a suburban world that never quite behaved like it was supposed to. Their town had superheroes, personal nemeses, dancing tattooed moms, and ice cream men who waged psychological warfare. It was childhood stretched into surrealism. Every story felt like it came from a dream you almost forgot, but remembered just enough to know it meant something. There were bike rides that felt like quests, songs that seemed to change time, and friendships that dug deep into the soul. Little Pete was defiant and wild, a spark of rebellion. Big Pete was thoughtful and unsure, trying to figure out who he was becoming. Together, they made sense of a world that never did. The show never explained itself. That was its brilliance. It did not try to teach you a lesson, it just let you feel. Joy, confusion, sorrow, wonder. It trusted that you could handle that. And somehow, you always could. Pete and Pete vanished not because it failed, but because it did not fit the mold. Too poetic to be a kid's show, too silly to be called art. So it slipped between the cracks, like many beautiful things do. But if you ever saw an episode, really saw it, then you know it still lives somewhere deep inside your memory, right next to that weird summer day that felt like it meant more than it should have. The concept was pure late 60s brilliance. A group of idealistic college students crash land on a mysterious island where the adult world no longer exists. No teachers, no parents, no government, just a blank slate to rebuild society from scratch. The new people was meant to be bold, a mirror held up to the counterculture generation. It blended themes of Lord of the Flies and Gilligan's Island, but with a serious tone and moral undertones. And yet, for all its ambition, the show never really worked. It aired on ABC as part of a half-hour drama experiment and never had time to breathe. Episodes felt rushed, ideas half-formed. The writing wrestled with big questions: freedom, power, equality, but the characters remained shallow and their struggles felt like debates rather than drama. The sets were plain, the stakes low. Viewers tuned in out of curiosity but quickly lost interest. Ratings sagged. The network gave it 17 episodes, but the cultural revolution it wanted to ignite never came. What should have been groundbreaking ended up feeling like a lecture. Even the cast, filled with fresh-faced newcomers, seemed lost in the tone shifts. There was potential in every frame, but no spark, no urgency, no heart. Today, The New People is more a forgotten experiment than a failure, one of those rare shows where the premise outshined every part of the execution. A utopia left unexplored, a generation's voice that never found the right words. There was something about Kate and Allie that just felt lived in, not flashy, not loud, just real. Two divorced women raising their kids under the same roof in a cozy New York apartment, trying to make things work when the world kept telling them it was not supposed to. You do not always think of this one when people list their favorite 80s shows, but the people who grew up with it? They remember it like family. Kate was the free spirit. Allie was the traditionalist. Together, they were balance, raising kids, juggling jobs, figuring out how to start over in the middle of their lives without losing their minds. And they did it without husbands, without a big house, and without pretending like everything was okay when it was not. That was the quiet power of the show. It said, "We are here. We are figuring it out, and that is enough." The laughs were subtle, dry humor, sarcastic glances across the kitchen, the kind of moments that felt like they were written by someone who had actually lived through 1,000 messy mornings and late-night fridge raids. And through it all, Kate and Allie stuck together, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. Their kids, Emma, Jenny, and Chip, added their own chaos: teen drama, homework, arguments over the phone line. But it was never the over-the-top, exaggerated kind. These were the kinds of arguments that happened in your own house. You saw yourself in them. You heard your own voice coming out of those rooms. And maybe that is why the show still lingers in the memory, even if it got buried under glossier titles. It was a blueprint for the way real families live and love, for how women, especially women outside the mold, can create their own version of home. Not with a perfect partner or a suburban fantasy, but with each other, with friendship, with persistence. It did not try to be revolutionary, but it quietly was. In an era of nuclear families and traditional sitcom tropes, Kate and Allie looked different. They sounded different. And they reminded viewers, especially young ones, that the people who show up for you do not always come in the package you expect. If you forgot about Kate and Allie, that is okay. But maybe now is the right time to remember the strength, the honesty, the warmth, and how sometimes your best second chance is standing right beside you in the kitchen, passing the coffee and saying, "We've got this." Aliens in the Family was one of those shows that made you do a double take. Part puppet show, part live-action sitcom, it was a science fiction oddity that aired on ABC in 1996. It followed a blended family, half human, half alien, trying to live together under one roof. Think The Brady Bunch meets The Muppets, with a dash of outer space weirdness. It was colorful, chaotic, and completely offbeat, and audiences had no idea what to do with it. Children were confused, parents were indifferent, critics were baffled. The puppet characters, created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, were impressive, but the tone of the show constantly bounced between wacky and heartfelt, never quite landing on either. One moment, you had alien dad jokes and slapstick burps, and the next, you had tearful lessons about acceptance and identity. It didn't just blur tones, it erased the lines completely. In doing so, it gave some kids their first glimpse of what it meant to feel different and still be loved. The jokes often missed. The emotional moments felt too strange to sink in. But under all the eccentricity was something unique, an attempt to talk about blended families, about difference and acceptance, through the lens of weird intergalactic humor. It was bold. Too bold, maybe. Only a handful of episodes aired before it was quietly pulled from the schedule. It has since become a punchline in weird TV retrospectives. But there is a generation of viewers who caught those few episodes wide-eyed, wondering if they had imagined the whole thing. For them, it was not just bizarre, it was oddly touching. The show tried to say something about what makes a family, and how love looks different across space and species. The Ben Stiller Show was where sarcasm met sincerity, sketch met structure, and comedy took a slightly weirder turn. It aired in various forms from 1992 to 1995, first on MTV and later on Fox, but barely lasted a season in either place. Still, for those who caught it, it felt like something new. Ben Stiller, then just beginning his rise, hosted and led the sketches, joined by future legends like Janeane Garofalo, Andy Dick, and Bob Odenkirk. The writing was sharp, offbeat, and unafraid to punch both up and sideways. It parodied pop culture with a precision that felt less like ridicule and more like dissection. But it was too niche, too weird, too smart for a mass audience that was still tuned into sitcom comfort food. There was a sketch where Ben played Tom Cruise in a fake action movie trailer, and it felt more accurate than the real thing. The humor was meta before meta was a buzzword. You weren't just laughing, you were being let in on a creative secret. Ratings never clicked. Fox pulled the plug, but the echoes of its style, fast edits, character-driven absurdity, and deep-cut satire are all over modern comedy. In many ways, it was a blueprint, a test run for what would become the tone of shows like Mr. Show, The Office, or even sketch segments on late night. The Ben Stiller Show proved that comedy could be thoughtful without being preachy, and even though it was gone in a flash, it left behind a creative footprint that never really faded. Before inclusion became a buzzword, Hang Time quietly lived it. This teen sitcom was centered on a high school basketball team, with one twist. One of the star players, Julie Connor, was a girl, and the series never treated that as a gimmick. It explored what it meant to break into a boy's world, not with magic or rebellion, but with sheer talent and quiet determination. Julie was strong, not because she was written to be, but because she had to be. The show did not just focus on the court, it dove into race, gender, friendship, and pressure. Real issues with no easy answers. It did so with warmth, humor, and sincerity, never talking down to its young audience. Coach Katowinski, the wise mentor figure, often acted as the voice of reason, but never the voice of perfection. Hang Time did not push boundaries, it lived within them, and still showed us how to stretch them from the inside. Its impact was subtle, but deeply felt by viewers who saw themselves in characters finally playing for more than just a win. The teens stumbled, they failed, they fought, and through it all, the team came first. The bond that formed on the hardwood felt genuine, earned, and familiar to anyone who ever played a sport or tried to find their place. Hang Time ran for 6 seasons, but somehow it still slipped through the cracks of nostalgia. Maybe because it never screamed for attention. It just showed up, week after week, doing what great shows do, telling stories that made people feel seen. It was never just about basketball. It was about believing that the game, like life, had room for everyone. You would think that turning one of the most successful comedies of all time into a television show would be a sure thing. But Delta House proved just how quickly lightning can escape the bottle. Based on the hit movie Animal House, this series tried to translate the chaos, raunch, and rebellion of the big screen into a weekly sitcom, only now under the watchful eye of network censors. And it showed. Gone were the wild parties, the edge, and the sense of danger. What remained was a watered-down echo of what once made people howl with laughter. Some of the original cast returned, including John Vernon as the uptight Dean Wormer, but without John Belushi's magnetic presence, the show felt like a tribute act. The humor was neutered. The stories went nowhere. ABC hoped that the mere association with the movie would be enough to draw in fans, But those fans were not fooled. This was not the Animal House they remembered. Ratings started strong but fell quickly. The characters, once riotous and wild, now felt flat and safe. Within 13 episodes, the show was off the air. Critics called it forgettable. Even the network seemed eager to move on. Delta House became another example of how television sometimes strangles the very spirit it hopes to bottle. You cannot fake irreverence, and you definitely cannot sanitize rebellion. Today, it is a curiosity, remembered mostly by die-hard fans and trivia buffs. A show that tried to cash in on chaos and wound up lost in the quiet. Which of these classics still lives in your head? Drop your favorite in the comments, tap like if you felt even one chill, and subscribe so the reel never stops spinning.